All right, so in an entirely predictable series of events, Biden's negotiations with the Republican Party on his next infrastructure proposal have basically just broken down, okay? So Biden initially put forward his pathetic $2 trillion infrastructure package, which is $2 trillion, reminder, over 8 years. So that comes out to about 200 and something billion dollars per year, which is about a third of our military investments every single year. So, as Joe Biden goes out and calls this a once-in-a-generation investment, he's actually not taking it seriously at all and isn't even coming close to what the actual experts on this issue, like the American Society of Civil Engineers, estimates that we need in order to bring our infrastructure up to a grade of a B plus or just on par, which is about $1 trillion a year by 2025. And so even with Joe Biden's initial pathetic moderate Republican style infrastructure plan on the table, Republicans still cannot bring themselves to come anywhere even remotely close to that. And I've been putting forward numbers like 400 billion or 250 billion in new investments over the next 8 years, which is just pathetic. Should be laughed out of the room in any serious negotiations surrounding what we actually need to be investing on infrastructure and climate change legislation right now. And Ed Markey, fortunately, I mean, it seems like at least the tide is turning a little bit right now with politicians who are just basically fed up with Joe Biden continuing these pointless negotiations, where the result is obvious. It's just going to be watering down these bills further and further and further to get, in the end, probably not nearly enough Republican votes to pass it, but maybe even no Republican votes. So here's what Ed Markey had to say on Chris Hayes' show on MSNBC, basically just talking about how this is pointless and we should move on and actually take this issue seriously.
That the news they have a deal and the White House coming out basically with a wait and see message. What's your understanding of where things stand?
Well, it sounds like to me that they have a package which is climate denial masquerading as bipartisanship. We can't have an infrastructure bill in 2021 that doesn't have climate at its center. And any other bill that we are going to consider that does not have aggressive solutions to the climate crisis will just have that response, which I've been giving, which is no climate, no deal. That's the only way in which we can respond. This bill has to meet the magnitude of the challenges which the climate crisis is presenting to our country and to the planet.
Right, so I like that ending line that he just put out there, no climate, no deal, but you have to actually back it up in what you're saying there, because the implication of what you're saying is no climate, no deal. Well, then you should be going to Joe Biden and saying anything less than X amount invested in these different areas for climate change or infrastructure in general, and we will not vote for it. And then you get a cohesive block of other senators together, maybe you include Bernie Sanders and some others, and you say, we're not going to vote for this package, therefore it cannot pass unless you include this, this, and this. And then guess what? Then Joe Biden is going to have to pretty much stop negotiating with Republicans and reorient himself to only negotiating within the members of his own party, with the conservative end of Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, and then the more progressive end, I guess you could say, in the Bernie Sanders and Ed Markeys of the world. So if you're going to say no climate, no deal, then you have to actually mean that, and you actually have to come up with a strategy and a plan to let Biden know that you have red lines in the sand that you're not willing to cross as far as how pathetic this infrastructure and climate investment is going to be. So just to give you a relative idea of what would be necessary to actually tackle climate change, this is the Thrive Act fact sheet. And so the Thrive agenda is basically something that's sponsored by, here you have a list right here, Ed Markey, Jeff Merkley, Debbie Dingle, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Pramila Jayapal, Earl Blumenauer, Ro Khanna, Yvette Clark, and Nanette Barragan. And so this is the Thrive Act, which basically just outlines what's actually necessary for this moment in order to adequately invest in climate change legislation. And so I think this is a pretty good benchmark for what we actually need in this moment. They say the Thrive Act authorizes investments of at least $1 trillion per year. And you can go ahead and read this. I'll link this down below. There's a more detailed version here as well. But I think this is a good benchmark. They go through all of the details of what we need to invest in. But, $1 trillion a year should really be the benchmark, right? Because as I've said in all of my videos in these discussions surrounding infrastructure so far, the American Society of Civil Engineers, who are the actual experts on this issue, estimate that we need about $1 trillion in spending every single year up until 2025 in order to just upgrade our infrastructure to get it up to par. But if you're somebody who actually cares about the United States leading the world in infrastructure, which we do have the resources necessary to accomplish that goal, then we should be investing even more than that. $1 trillion should be the bare minimum. And I know it's a large number because we have Democrats in power right now like Joe Biden who are austerity prosperity-minded politicians who want to, tax X amount in order to pay for this infrastructure investments and don't understand modern monetary theory and the fact that our government can actually just pay for these things up front, and it doesn't actually come at a negative cost to us down the road, because these investments will pay for themselves as you expand the economy and grow different economic sectors with these infrastructure investments. But because we have politicians that are leading the Democratic Party with that mindset, we are limited in some capacity. But $1 trillion shouldn't sound anything crazy. I mean, we spend damn near $1 trillion on our military every single year. So of course we could actually make investments in our own people and in our own country with $1 trillion a year. So it's something that's absolutely feasible and realistic. And honestly, it's getting really tiring and annoying to have a lot of these politicians just sitting by and watching as Biden goes and consults Republicans who don't actually care about getting anything substantive passed. And he's just wasting time watering down bills for absolutely no reason. So we need more of this energy that Ed Markey was just putting forward here, but we also need an actual concrete strategy, right? So that strategy is the same one that I've been talking about for months and months and months and months now, is that whether it's the squad in the House or whether it's people like Ed Markey and Bernie Sanders in the Senate, you got to get a collective group together, come together and actually create a plan and say, Joe Biden, we're not going to vote for this unless it's $1 trillion a year. Or we're not going to vote for this unless it's X amount of years, X amount per year. And then Joe Biden will be forced to drop negotiations with the Republican Party and recognize that, yes, he's only going to be able to do this through the process of budget reconciliation with members of his own party. And then you only have to contend with the Joe Manchins of the world instead of having to contend with the Mitt Romneys and the Mitch McConnells and whatnot of the Republican Party. So that's the strategy that needs to be implemented and actually carried out. Will they do it? I guess we'll find out. But at least Ed Markey seems to be with the right mindset of no climate, no deal.